welcome everybody. It's me, Brandy P, with Yes, I Am the Veteran podcast. I'm joined with my amazing co-host, the amazing Miss Amelia Peacock from the Sentinels Collective, and the 6-time Emmy Award-winning filmmaker, the always awesome, the abominable Miss Pacific Sour. How are you ladies doing?
Hello.
We're here. Anything else is extra?
It's Thursday.
We made it almost. We're about there, 2/3 of the way through the weekish.
Yes.
And so, how are you ladies doing?
I'm doing great. I'm getting ready for a nice little bit of a break.
Yeah, it's your birthday cruise. Like, happy birthday early, sis. I hope you have a great time on your cruise.
Thank you.
Have shenanigans for me.
Def, I sure will. And Pacifica.
Yeah. You definitely have to do something like themed for each of us. That's for sure. So Pacifica, you were just in was it Oregon for the Social Justice Films Festival? How was that?
Oh yeah, we went up to Seattle to present the film to the Social Justice Film Festival there, and it was an exciting time. People in Seattle, my Lucy is very excited about it.
Lucy's happy to be here. I thought she's feeling better.
Me too. The people there were tremendously nice. I've never really spent a lot of time in Seattle, but I kind of like it up there, and the issues that they presented there at the festival, I think are very important. And I'm hoping that the personal narratives that we presented there over the weekend will help people care more about this issue and hopefully shed light where darkness is. So mission accomplished. We had a good time. And I'm glad we had a chance to go.
And now I definitely want to go visit up there after you showed me those pictures of when you guys were camping near Mount Rainier. Like, man, it was so cool.
Isn't that something else?
Living my dream, Pacifica.
and it's a volcano too. So while you're there, you get to live with the anxiety of possibly being blown off the face of the planet.
You didn't watch some apocalyptic movie before you decided to go, knowing you probably did.
If you go up to Seattle, the Pacific Northwest, make sure you're fine with your life.
Have your affairs in order. Noted.
Right. Tie up all your loose ends.
Isn't that before you go anywhere on travel?
Just about now. There are no guarantees. You fly off now and you get caught somewhere, you never get back. So.
Yeah, for real. Unfortunately, you're not wrong. I remember it was 2 years ago. I was stuck in Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris for like 18 hours, and someone had just stolen my phone, and I was like so worried I was gonna like oversleep and like be stuck in Paris. And like I woke up and a guy was petting me like a cat, like in Eurotrip. Like, Muscusi. I was like, "Rah!" Like I will fight. Reason I need like a service boyfriend or something, I guess.
Oh, that's hilarious.
You need one of those Weekend at Bernie's mannequins that you can drag around with you.
One that's not like the whole weight of a human body, because that would be a pain to like lug around an airport. I did a human leg once because there was an in-flight issue with the amputees prosthetic, and I carried it through 2 airports. And that was 60 pounds. And I'm like already down part of a leg. So I was confusing the hell out of people carrying a leg, walking down the airport. And Maggie's like half a mile in front of me. So no one knows it's her leg. Like, she doesn't care. Like, imagine if I trip over someone.
Took off with her.
Yeah, she just zoomed off. I was like, look, well, I'm just going to figure it out then. Like, how do you call like a wheelchair assist for you and another leg? Like, then there's like more questions. And probably
the leg needs to go on the under part.
Yeah, probably unsatisfactory answers. Anyways, the podcast adventures, we have legion. That is for sure. And
I always thought I might like to have a glass eye, but maybe a prosthetic leg would be more fun. You could really have some fun with a fake leg and a glass eye.
Yeah, I know a gentleman that has a glass eye, and I've gotten after him for a while because we thought it was a lazy eye, but it was just because no one had like everyone was scared of him, and no one wanted to tell him that he needed to adjust the eye. And I told him like when I found out because I have part of a leg missing, and I was just like, you could have done so much with that. You could have been like the last action hero guy, and you could have like had like the globe and anchor, you know, like you could have had like all kinds of stuff. And you chose to be normal. Why? But I was like, if I could snap in like parts in the leg China, like I'd have like all kinds of different like patterns, like China plate, you know, like I'd go to town. The future. That's where I hope I can find it. But well, it's not very often that we have podcasts that we've never had on like guests from like certain topics. But tonight's guest, especially, I'm very excited to have on Miss Sara Boyd because of the fact that she has a lot of amazing information about what she does and Operation Truth Toxic Exposure Research. So I'm going to go ahead and bring her on now. Hey, sis, how are you doing?
Hi, good evening. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Absolutely. And so, did you want to maybe introduce yourself to our viewers as well as maybe what branch you're in?
Sure. My name is Sara Boyd, as you stated. I was in the Army on active duty for 10 years. I joined in the delayed entry program in 97, officially basic training, shipped off to basic training in Fort Jackson in 1998. And I was forced to medically be discharged from the Army in 2008. So I've been out for a little while. During that time, I've done my research, and I've had to be my own advocate, my own doctor, my own uh, um, uh, um, pharmacist, and so much more to try to advocate for my care and for others like me in my patient demographic. And what that is I have been confirmed and diagnosed by the nation's top medical researchers at the War Related Injury and Illness Study Center with vaccine injury. And I was the first non combat veteran to be seen through their evaluation service and be part of the Go For registry. So I just want to say again, thank you so much for giving me this space to speak on this topic, a topic that so many are fearful of speaking of and speaking out about, and even just being an ally for.
Absolutely. We are honored to have you on, sis. And you've got quite a story, and I can't wait for us to get into it.
And so with that, Sara, because I'm very excited to hear a little bit more as well, especially as you mentioned the advocacy area. That's something I'm very adamant about is advocating. But I'm very curious. It sounds like some of your background that you just shared with us is kind of what inspired you to found Operation Truth, the toxic exposure research. Tell us a little bit more about that and what that looks like.
Yeah, of course. Back in 2017 is when I started gathering the information to determine which route I was going to go. If I was going to start a charity 501c3 or maybe some other kind of business venture. And it wasn't until 2019 that I officially um, paid the fees and um, got our name officially through the federal government and became a 501c3. And the reason why I chose 501c3 over a 501c4, which is a lobbying firm, is because initially we were just going to bring awareness to this topic. We were going to gather stories of patients, veterans, and civilians alike, and share through this awareness of why we would need policy change. And then once I started this venture and discovered how challenging it was going to be, and speaking with others that had been advocates for our Desert Storm and Desert Shield veterans, I knew that we were going to have to expand our reach from just awareness to educating Congress and other leaders to make that policy change. And so as an advocate, that awareness is key. But without that awareness going somewhere to produce policy change, you're not going to see anything um, different in the VA or otherwise. So when we speak of what we currently have in our VA systems for both compensation and health benefits, those have been earned from disabled veterans fighting Congress and our VA leadership to make that policy change um, throughout the systems. And so currently, what I found out was that the PACT Act expanded to include a lot of our non combat related toxins, but they didn't change the policy for compensation. And although they have educated some in our VA leadership and beyond, the education has not been disseminated to the lowest level or even to the doctor level. And
Mhm.
please forgive me for my speech. I have what is called autonomic neuropathy, is caused from my vaccine injury. And my diagnosing doctor, who is the lead researcher at the War Related Injury and Illness Study Center, actually brought to the table to the secretary of the VA, excuse me, the secretary of the VA, um, his presentation of all toxic exposure patients, combat and non-combat related, having some form of autonomic neuropathy, which is damage to the brainstem and can include the central nervous system as well as the peripheral nervous system, which is what the autonomic nervous system is part of. And so the autonomic nervous system or the nerve damage in my body is quite extensive. And every patient is different. More likely or not, of course, due to the extent of their toxic exposures. Like I stated, was in the Army on active duty for 10 years. And even though I didn't go to a combat theater of operation, the damage started in basic training. And the Department of Defense didn't identify what that presented like in the body. Had they had that information of what a vaccine injury looked like, they would have discontinued giving me the vaccine
Yep.
series, all of them potentially
Yep.
making me a non-combat veteran, but I could have, or a non-deployable veteran, but
Yep.
I could have still been on active duty. Um, but with that being said, the most important part of catching it early is that
Mhm.
I and many others wouldn't have continued to get vaccinated or exposed to their toxins, creating this extensive cellular damage, which is part of our mission of educating our U.S. Congress and veteran or VA leaders to change policy so that they can inform the Department of Defense of the proper PPE and
Mhm.
what to look for if a service member is exposed to these toxins or vaccine injuries so they can
Mhm.
change what needs to be changed so that they don't get the same cellular damage, as well as treatment and diagnostic procedures. I'm not sure if you're aware, but after the COVID pandemic, we have had a lot of long-term COVID patients,
Yep.
as well as vaccine injured
Mhm.
patients. But the only patients that are being recognized are the long COVID patients, majorly. Um, uh, but the uh, forgive me, the WHO, I believe, has finally recognized the vaccine injury proponent and has expanded their what's it called? When you get a medical code.
Yep.
So vaccine patients have a medical code of vaccine injury, which means there's enough of us globally to have this medical code need. But without the ability to diagnose and treat, we're not having these proper medical codes in place. And without the education, these doctors are recognizing the cellular damage being caused by these toxins. And it's not just our vaccine injured patient demographic, it's also our toxic exposures. That
Yep.
includes the environmental toxins for our combat veterans. It includes the environmental toxins in our civilian sector. And so what we really need is clinics nationally and eventually globally, much like they produce for our long COVID patients. Those patients are in need of proper health care, but so are the millions of others that have these unexplainable medical conditions. And in some cases, our veterans have been suffering with these unexplained conditions, of which the VA calls Gulf War illness, since the 90s.
Yep.
Well, you talked a little bit about education and trying to get some policy change. So tell us about the Loomis bill and what it is, its significance, and how we can support it. I understand you have a petition.
Yeah, so the Loomis Bill is part of our sister program, if you will. It's an individual that was a child of a Vietnam veteran who was exposed to Agent Orange, and as a result, passed those genetic mutations onto his child. And she was born with some pretty significant medical challenges as a result. So she started this bill to bring to the attention to our U.S. Congress for the need for funding of our research of our offspring. That includes the entire Gulf War era of what the VA calls anyone that has served from the 1990s until current present day is the Gulf War era. And then anyone, of course, before that in the Vietnam era. And it has now been expanded to include non-combat exposures as well. But this Loomis bill is mainly for our children and getting funding for that research and what that looks like, and determining from there if they can get medical insurance coverage and recognized and validated for their medical conditions that we potentially passed on through our genetics. And then we have a survey that we are doing our best to get as many of those potential non-combat veterans children involved in this Loomis bill. And so what that survey looks like is just a few questions that can be filled out in under 10 minutes, just to gain a bit of more information to determine if any of our non-combat veterans that have been exposed to various different toxins, including vaccines, if their children have any of these different medical conditions. And it can vary from a skin condition uh, what's that, eczema, or something more serious as spina bifida or other birth defects. I know a lot of women veterans I've spoken to have different reproductive concerns and have had birth defects or delays or miscarriages, and it could possibly be from their military service and the toxins that they were exposed to. So these are the things we're trying to gain from that survey, and that survey can be found on any one of our social media platforms. And
And we'll be posting it as well too on our podcast pages. So that way we can make sure that we can support as well.
Thank you so much. And then as far as Operation Truth, our main education for our U.S. Congress and VA leadership is to produce a Toxic Exposure Patient Care Act, and that will cover the things that I've spoken about, and create these toxic exposure clinics nationally that will um, treat every toxic exposure and vaccine injured patient across the nation. That includes our combat veterans, our non-combat veterans, our children that we could have potentially exposed to,
Yep.
or and every civilian um, exposure, as well as vaccine injuries. What we're seeing across the board, and why this is important to put all these together, and why the VA has done so as well, is that a lot of these exposures have created the same or similar cellular damage patterns. And so, therefore, we can use the same or similar treatment protocols for each one of these patient demographics. What we're seeing is that whether you're vaccine injured, whether you've been exposed to environmental toxins or otherwise, you have damage to your your immune system in the form of what could present in over 250 different connective tissue disorders. Connective tissue disorders, of course, are like lupus, or there's so many, um, or the cellular pattern is
Colors,
also
yeah.
being found in damage to our nervous systems, like I was saying, autonomic nerve damage, or peripheral nerve damage. So those same cellular patterns of destruction can use the same treatment protocol. And what we're seeing, each one of these patient demographics are able um, to gain more function by going through these different treatment protocols of IVIG and hyperbaric chambers, or oxygen chambers, and cannabis and different psychedelic treatments. And um, there's so much more going on in our veteran community, um, and beyond, than PTSD. And I don't want to try to minimize that, because it's huge. And it is not just in our veteran community, but in our civilian community as well. It's not just post-traumatic trauma, it's also, sexual trauma and other things too. So um, what we've discovered with our veteran community, though, is if you have been exposed to toxins, or toxins in the environment, or vaccines, it can cause your PTSD or other traumas to be exacerbated because of what the toxins do to the body and the brain.
Absolutely. And you had an excellent point when you were bringing that up. There's like, for me, I was an aerospace medical technician in the military, and I was trained to be able to read and interpret any service member branch wise his medical records. And anytime that it's caught, or in theory, what it should happen is they should be writing like an exposure summary, like they have to put something from public health in your medical record. And what always astonished me was, because every so often veterans will ask me to read the records. I'm not a VSO, but I'll tab the pages and I'll send them to a VSO with the veteran's permission if they ask. And I've never come across a medical record that there wasn't some sort of a potential exposure, or like actual exposure to something. And I can't tell you how many times the veteran had no idea, from it being asbestos, in their facilities or their water, or, maybe a place that they were stationed, vaccines. There's so many different ways toxins can get into your body. And I think a lot of times we tend to limit ourselves in that, when it comes to thinking like, was I exposed to something or not? And it's really, one, knowing what's in your medical record. And a lot of us don't have our service records. And that's why it's so important to have that. So if there's any sort of documentation that can help you, it's good to have and know, so that way you're able to do more as far as just, not just being not educated, just being in the dark about it, I guess I would say. And so, Sarah, would you say are non-combat veterans eligible to receive compensation for? I'm sorry, I apologize. So, are all veterans eligible for a toxic exposure screening?
Yes, since the PACT Act came out, you are correct. All veterans, regardless of where they served, are eligible for a toxic exposure screening, as well as being part of the different registries, and can be sent to the War-Related Injury and Illness Study Center. Because of the lack of education across the nation, unfortunately, many VAs are not aware of that. And so, what I actually had to do, because I was living in Michigan at the time, and I'm from Washington State, I had to take a year and live in Washington. Once I was living back and was established back at the Seattle VA, I could then reapply to be referred to the War Related Injury and Illness Study Center, or RISC, facility in Palo Alto, California. And why I had to do that, even though we have 3 different facilities across the nation, is because only the Palo Alto, California facility had the researchers with the education needed for my case. The region I was in, Michigan, denied me. I believe it was the New Jersey facility. They denied me and claiming that they do not see non-combat veterans. So I had to, like I said, go back to Washington, be part of that Pacific Northwest region, and be referred once more. But this isn't something that has been recent since the PACT Act. I was referred back in 2015 to go through the Gulf War Registry and be seen at the War Related Injury and Illness Study Center. But before COVID was uh, um, um, the pandemic happened, before we did everything online, uh, we had to go to the facility to go through this week-long evaluation. And because I'm a cannabis patient and it's a federal facility, back in 2015, 2016 timeframe, they would not allow me to be seen at their facility. So there was all these things that had to happen before I could even be evaluated and get that final validation of that root cause analysis. And even when I did get that root cause analysis, and I moved back to Michigan, the doctors, regardless of where I've been, whether it's been through the Texas VA, Washington State VA, or now Michigan VA, all refused to acknowledge my vaccine injury diagnoses. And in the Michigan VA, it's been so bad that they removed my vaccine injury diagnosis and replaced it with malingerer, claiming that I was making it all up for attention. And this has
Wow.
happened more than once. And when you get that label, of course, anyone knows as women, it
Yeah.
makes it even more challenging to be seen as real and in need of equal health care. But when I got those diagnoses and they removed my critical vaccine injury diagnoses, I was then labeled, just as they were saying, someone who was making it all up. Is all in my head. Vaccine injuries don't occur, and if they do, it's very rare. And so this misinformation that has been placed out, even with the new data that we've had for over 2 decades, they refuse to update this data and educate their doctors through their different education systems, even through the VA. And so another layer of what we're attempting through U.S. Congress is to get the VA to educate their leadership and beyond about these vaccine injuries and how they present in the body. And if you go to the VA's public health website, if you just Google VA public health toxic exposure, it'll pull up every toxic exposure that the VA recognizes that causes what they call chronic multi-symptom illness or Gulf War illness. And the difference is whoever didn't go to the Gulf, obviously, or that theater of operation has chronic multi-symptom illness. And so that would include every non-combat veteran who has any other non-combat of theater-related exposures. And so not only is the VA publicly sharing this information, but they are very non-publicly um, causing the veteran and other citizens to um, to to advocate for their own care because they refuse to acknowledge and admit that these other exposures and vaccine injuries included are occurring in our citizens.
Oh,
Man. And whew. Yeah, you hit a heartstring of mine there with the advocating for self, because that is a daily battle for a lot of us, especially those of us that do have, like you mentioned, the chronic multi-symptoms or different things going on that are just a lot of different things, but not necessarily connected. And so with that, I'm curious, you mentioned, all veterans are able to do a toxic exposure screening. Are non-combat veterans eligible to receive compensation for vaccine related injury? And how would
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, like, how would you start the process of like, is it going to your PCP and telling them you want like an exam?
Yeah, so that's the very first part of the process is you go to your PCP and they should ask that toxic exposure screening, and then they should determine from there if you're eligible. But if they don't, I would speak directly to your PCP and ask them for a referral to what is called the environmental or toxic exposure environmental coordinator. Every VA facility should have one, not at every level. So I'm sure your lower level CBOCs aren't going to have that. They may not even know what it is. But your higher level VA facilities most definitely should employ at least 2 or more individuals for this program. And what they are supposed to have is the knowledge to push you through the registries and to refer you to the risk facilities. But unfortunately, even the environmental coordinators don't have the education needed, especially for our non-combat veterans. So it's imperative that they do advocate for their own care and they do push their PCP to refer them. And their PCP should refer them to the risk facility as well. There's a lot of education on our website. I can also send it to them directly. Anyone that wants to send me their email, can contact me through our website at operationtruth.net, and I can send them any specific information they may need. And the key is just having a binder and bringing it into your appointments. And no, not every doctor is going to drop that bias and be willing to um, have you, the patient, educate them, the doctor.
yeah,
Yeah.
Many doctors, especially those that are in the rheumatology field, have been quite boisterous with how much they've been educated and how much I am not, and other patients. And so it's unfortunate that the VA specifically has placed this on our shoulders to educate doctors that refuse to listen to us. But as the old saying goes, no matter you bring the horse to the water, you can't make him drink. And
you can waterboard them. I'm just kidding.
Brandy.
that's where it comes to force the education into their minds and do your best to drop those barriers and biases. As far as compensation is concerned, I have spoken to several veterans who have been able to achieve compensation for their vaccine injury related diseases, but it's not in the current policy write-up. And even though the Veterans Health Administration recognizes it as a viable medical condition that is obviously caused by your service connection, the Veteran um, Benefits Association
Mhm.
don't have it in their policy. And so just last year, I placed a massive amount of the limited energy I have into doing my best to increase my percentage and getting compensated for my vaccine injury. I have learned um, in these last 5 years from other veterans that if you pass away from a medical condition that you are not service connected for, the chances are your family will not get any of the benefits that they deserve and you earned. And so
Yep.
I'm doing my due diligence to ensure that I'm service connected for these vaccine injured medical conditions. But
Mhm.
as I stated before, I was medically discharged from the Army, so I had a lot of those already service connected. And so what was easy for me at the Texas going through the Texas representatives, they have, I believe, the most educated and best VSOs in the nation because they are employed as GS workers, and so they put a lot more effort into gaining that education. And I
Mhm.
was able to achieve unemployability status and get that 100%, but only at the 90% uh, uh, for two medical conditions that I was already service connected for. So this last year, I've been doing my due diligence to get service connected for these additional medical challenges. And I was denied for every single condition that I sent in, except for my vaccine injury, which that just blew my mind because God was definitely at work there, opening some doors wide because they came back and denied every single medical condition, but gave me 0% for my vaccine injury. So this year, I've been working with um, this incredible VSO that has retired since, but I put together my supplemental claim and I pray that this time around they do a better job at evaluating and connecting the dots. And what I put in my supplemental claim, I put together like I was a lawyer putting together my case for, Social Security or what have you. So I connected the dots and made it real easy for them to understand. But
Mhm.
until the policies change, it's not in their CFR book and it's not in their toxic exposure policy book. And so there's nothing for them to go by. But you can, as a veteran, go behind the those closed doors and get service connected for the medical conditions that have been caused by those toxins. For example, a lot of our veterans may have thyroid issues that they're not aware of that has been caused by their toxic exposures. That
Yep.
could be from the various different environmental exposures that they were at risk for their own MOS. So there's many different medical challenges that I think people don't connect to toxic exposures because of the misinformation, and the doctors would rather say that it's genetic or it's all in your head. I have yet to find a doctor that would admit that they don't know.
Yeah, and that's the hard part, right? Is that fighting ego is not a easy thing in the medical field.
There's a lot
Where
of
can
bias.
you where can you go to find out more about toxic exposures, what they are, and what conditions can be caused by them.
A great source is our website, operationtruth.net. There's many other sources through the VA. The VA has done a great job of adding those PACT Act toxins and making those connections. There's unfortunately a long list of cancers that can also be caused by toxic exposures. It really depends on which toxin you believe you may have been exposed to, and then going from there. But um, I am open to anyone that needs assistance in trying to determine what that toxin may have been in their case, as well as advocating for them uh, through the VA system or otherwise.
Thank you, sis. We appreciate that. And, if you guys have questions, definitely reach out on operationtruth.net. If you have something that you want us to have her answer, if she comes back on again, which we'd absolutely love to have. She's such a wealth of knowledge. Please let us know. We're here to help. That's the whole reason for what we do.
And thank you so much. And we could talk for hours, days on this topic.
Absolutely.
I know specifically when it comes to vaccine injuries, when it comes to vaccine injuries and toxins within the vaccines, it really has to do with whether the vaccine is a live vaccine or a non-live vaccine. The non-live vaccines are a lot more high risk for certain individuals. And we believe at Operation Truth and many other research agencies that there's a genetic anomaly that makes some people more susceptible to toxic exposure, which is why not every veteran has Gulf War illness that comes back from combat, and why not every veteran has a vaccine injury, even though we all have received multiple vaccinations multiple times at once. And so the key is understanding the risk and what that risk, the most high risk vaccinations that are given to the military, from what I was told through the risk facility, is the anthrax vaccine, the smallpox vaccine, and now the COVID vaccine. So if you have received any of those vaccines, as well as many others, you could potentially have a toxic exposure due to that risk. And with the anthrax vaccine, which is what the risk facility believes is what caused my medical challenges, the researchers have found that the anthrax vaccine is the most toxic because it's attached to the aluminum adjuvant and potentially the squalene adjuvant. And what was attached to it was the synthetic form of anthrax, which is the PA63 synthetic anthrax protein. And what that protein does is causes cellular apoptosis or cellular death throughout the body. And so what had occurred in these individuals like myself is that they believe as a result of these adjuvant substances, the aluminum and squalene and others in these non-live vaccines, cause these synthetic proteins and other toxic materials to go outside of the immune system, travel throughout the body, including breaking through the blood-brain barrier, attaching much like a cancer, and then changing the genetic function of those cells. And that's how we have so much chronic illness in our toxic exposure patients, and the level of cellular damage is extensive.
And you have to think about it too with anthrax, you have to give a series of 8 to deploy and then boosters after that. So that's a lot of it, a repeated exposure attempts, or not attempts, but potentials that are out there. And one thing that before we do go to our knowledge drop, I wanted to talk about it really briefly. Is something that we found when we had an expert on the Camp Lejeune water contamination cases. One thing that I really disagree with is that you can only claim if you were removed from service honorably. Like you got out of the service honorably. So like say if you had a bad conduct discharge, if you had anything other than honorable, anything like that, you know, they're basically saying that you wouldn't be eligible. But me personally, I feel that because of the fact that anytime you have a court martial, the first thing they have to do is review your record for an MEB potentially, that they could have you separate that way because it's usually cheaper. And at the end of the day, what is really, you could look at it that they should have automatically have their type of discharge reviewed if they were found to be exposed, because of the fact that the exposures could have very much caused the conditions or led to reasons that they were separated in the first place. Not saying that that's the truth, because, you know, like, but, you know, it begs the question, you know, why does it have to be honorably discharged to be impacted?
You're absolutely right. And I'm sure that in that individual's case, if they got the right lawyer, they could fight that and have it changed successfully. I've known some veterans that have been able to do that, as well as family members fighting and advocating for their deceased veteran because they either took their life or took the life of someone else and themselves. There's been unfortunate cases of murder and other extreme criminal cases where our veterans have had those extreme thoughts or extreme actions as a result of those thoughts. And it has been found as a result of those toxins that they were exposed to, either injected or environmentally. Like I stated before, it has been found that if you are a combat veteran and have toxic exposure related medical conditions, more likely or not, your PTSD or traumas are exacerbated because of the damage that it has been caused at the brain and to the brain.
Absolutely. And, you know, for anybody that's listening tonight, if you know, after you check out operation.truth.net, definitely go on nih.gov as well. It's an excellent resource. If you type in like where you were, you know, in your military career, it can tell you potential toxins that you were exposed to as well. And it may help you just to like really start thinking about it. But yes, there's so much in medical records that we as veterans don't realize are there, and or that we were exposed to, or that we really should be advocating about. And so we very much appreciate having you on tonight. You've been absolutely a wealth of knowledge. And before we do wrap up, I will do a couple more things. And I think it is time for a knowledge drop.
So, Sarah, thank you first and foremost, because I mean, you couldn't have set this up better, sis, like for real. So I'm going to talk tonight for all of us, especially with the topic we've just discussed. You know, tonight's knowledge drop is for every veteran who has ever tried to make sense of the VA's process and has felt like each clinic, each department, the VA, though, I just want to say they are full of committed professionals doing important work. But like any large system, it has silos, right? And those silos make it hard for us veterans to get clear, consistent information about their health, toxic exposures included, screenings, registries, or our benefits. So naming that isn't about criticizing the VA. What it is about equipping us, all of us veterans and our family members, with the knowledge to move through this system with confidence rather than confusion. Here's the shift in perspective I'd like you to consider. You are not the barrier. The silo is. And once you understand the structure, you can navigate around it. Tonight's conversation with Sarah highlights exactly why this matters. Yeah. Toxic exposure is not a small issue. It's layered, it's complex, and it affects veterans from every era, combat and non-combat, as we've learned tonight. When information lives in separate pockets, veterans end up carrying the burden. And like she mentioned earlier, I love the way you said it, because it's exactly my thoughts, connecting the dots themselves. Mm-hmm. You know, and that I think is really where community comes in. And that's where peer support comes in. And that's where organizations like Operation Truth, like the Sentinels Collective step in, not to replace the VA, not to speak for the VA, but to help veterans understand their options, ask informed questions, and advocate for their coordinated care. So here's my call to action for you tonight. If something in your toxic exposure history doesn't sit right, don't wait. Request your screening. Ask for clarification. Reach out to Sara and Operation Truth at operationtruth.net. There's multiple ways of being able to access the information she has. Bring a peer with you. Share what you learn with another veteran. Like we've learned tonight, when we share knowledge, we strengthen the entire veteran ecosystem. You deserve answers that make sense. You deserve coordinated care. And you deserve to understand the system's designed to serve us. Knowledge is power. And when we share knowledge, we all move forward. Thank you for tonight's knowledge drop.
Yeah, what Amelia said.
Thanks, girl.
No gatekeeping, guys. I challenge every veteran listening tonight to share one thing that you learned today or like this week or this month that, you know, it can help a brother, it can help a sister. You never know. You know, everyone fights like invisible wars all the time. And so it's so important to share. Do not gatekeep. Like we need to normalize like the refusal of gatekeeping and to share with each other, you know, even if they know, right? Like what if they didn't? Like you can make all the difference, you know, in that person's life. And, you know, that's why I really enjoy doing this podcast because of the fact that I love to meet so many different amazing guests and hear so many amazing stories. And we really, truly appreciate having you on and sharing your personal story as well as what you guys are doing. And we love to have you come back on so you can let us know more about updates for the Loomis bill as well. So we'd love to support any way that we're able to do so. But we'll go ahead and go around and we'll do final thoughts. So Amelia, what are your final thoughts for today?
I think I summed it up in the knowledge drop, y'all. Ignite voices for change. Knowledge is power. Use it appropriately.
Yeah. All right. What about you, Pacifica?
I think it's very important to know what you're putting in your body. And I want to say that the authorities and doctors and everybody are trustworthy, but they're human beings too. And you have to advocate for yourself and make your own decisions and think for yourself. So all that's important when considering your health. Don't just take someone's word for it.
Yep. Your own best advocate all day.
Yep.
And Sara, what are your final thoughts for today, sis?
I just want to say again, thank you so much for allowing me to come on this space and for being our allies, dropping the biases and allowing us to bring awareness to this controversial topic. And if you're out there and you're looking for a charity to volunteer, we have a treasury position open as well as several outreach positions open. We're hoping to achieve at least one individual in every state to be our ambassador for truth.
Nice. Heck yeah. So if anyone's looking to, volunteer, here's an excellent opportunity. Be like the pillar of information in any party too, probably. Just kidding. But no, we very much appreciate it. And I can't wait to see how everything goes with the Loomis bill. I always get curious when people come on, and we don't say that we're a political podcast because we're not, but at the end of the day, sometimes there are laws that are being passed and legislation that is being discussed that impacts the veteran community. And so what better way for us to be veteran advocates than this, right? So definitely we will be sharing some information about like the FAQs that Sara had mentioned, as well as signatures for her petition. So because how many signatures are you guys looking to have total?
Our main goal was 10,000. Not to get onto another topic because I know we're ending the session, but
That's fine.
I used to be in the district of a certain representative here in Michigan, and he allowed me to meet with his office back in 2019. And his way of brushing us off was to tell us to get 10,000 signatures on our petition and then come back. And as an early advocate, I didn't realize what that meant. And what it really meant is we don't care about your patient demographic. We don't care about your veteran demographic. We're never going to sit with you and meet with you. And that's exactly been the case since 2019. I'm in a new district. We went to DC a couple years ago and marched the halls of the Senate and representative buildings, met face to face with many of these representatives and senators that refused to have a meeting with us, and they continue to this day to refuse to have those meetings.
Well, we'll definitely have to ask May for some pro tips about DC and door knocking and riot too. And we will definitely help there. And how many signatures are you guys at right now?
We're close to 7,000.
Hey, we can make that 3,000, guys. Like, we're gonna be sharing the crap out of that. We're gonna make it happen, Captain. I'm all about grassroots, so yes. We'll definitely be sharing that on the page as well. And then also, because of the fact that we're streaming live to Instagram, so I couldn't do a share screen. But she is an excellent source of information, both on her Operation Truth and on her Instagram, as well as her Facebook pages, for what it is she does. And we're going to be sharing that on our Instagram as well, like to our stories, things like that, because she's such a wealth of knowledge. So if you do have questions, please reach out. And I know that we did have it a little late tonight, but I don't ever mind if it's great information that's being passed. So we'll go ahead and close it up tonight. And if you have questions, if you want to come on our show, I don't bite most of the time. Pacifica, maybe. Just kidding.
Don't let Brandy lie. She bites.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, she's right. Busted. But at the end of the day, reach out to our podcast, email us, or, reach out on our social media pages, our Instagram, our Facebook, or YouTube, any of those, and we'll be happy to connect. And, I'm entirely fallible. I'm not the knower of everything, even though people call me the dictionary, even though I have no clue why. But at the end of the day, if I don't know, I'll connect you with someone who does, and that's what it's about, guys. So we will go ahead and close it up. And we are Yes, I Am the Veteran. Good night.
Hi, I'm Aurelia. Just a reminder, smash like, hit subscribe, and click the bell. Please give me my mommy some hearts. Yay, victories!